It's been a while since I mentioned that I was going to release Oniric version 2, and I'm very happy to finally say that it has been released. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Mario Olvera, welcome to Composite Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Composite Nation. My name is Mario Olvera, and today we're going to take a look to Oniric version 2. I've been working on this for a few months now, and I expect it to be weeks, but you know, software development can be a hell as well. We're gonna dive very deep on this video because I want to show you all the features that Oniric 2 has, because I want you to understand Oniric to its full potential. There are so much new features on this version of Oniric, and you can check them out on the documentation page. I spent a lot of time on this documentation, so you can understand exactly what is doing each feature. A lot has been changed since the last version, so the algorithm has been improved a lot. Actually, it is more natural. It seems like something more that you will see in real life. The UI has been redesigned for a better user experience. This is something that has been requested a lot from the support and people that have been asking me to have this feature on Oniric. And now you can have transparent glows, you have unmolded glows. That is something that will change a lot, because I know there's people doing like websites and something like that, and they use Oniric and want to have the glow, a transparent glow. So transparency is a really cool feature that we will check out in a minute. We can create channels based on different data from the selected layers. We can create channels from luminosity data and transparency data, which is really helpful for Oniric to create more precise masks. Oniric can now work with 32-bit images, so you can have a lot of glow there. You can have a lot of dynamic range, and you can create from really small areas like just 1 pixel. You can create a lot of glow. So that's pretty cool about the 32-bit support now. We have more sliders, we have more settings, like for example the core glow, which is really cool. We can now tweak the core glow and the other glow, so you can have more control over your glows. The glare is a really powerful feature as well. It is an enhancement, the improved algorithm of the streaks. If you use Oniric before, you are some kind of used to the streaks. Now streaks has been removed and it is now named glare, and you can create 2, 4, or 6 rays as well. And also there has been added some really cool effects to Oniric, but we are going to talk about in a minute. The exposure setting has been enhanced. You can then go from -5 to +5, so you can have extremely bright glows. Gamma is something that I really love in this new version because it's a game changer. It is a game changer, and if you like sabers or particles or everything like that, something glowy, something fantasy, something, I don't know. Gamma is a game changer because it creates that atmosphere for the glow that it wasn't possible like this version in the old Oniric. So I'm gonna show you how this works as well. We have 16-bit preview, which now, for example, in the past version of Oniric, it was previewing everything in 8 bits, so you could have some banding in the preview. Now, if you have the 16-bit preview, all that banding is removed in the preview. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And actually, if you turn off the 16-bit preview, it can work faster. But whenever you save it, it will save it in 16-bit. Now in the preview, you can isolate the glow to see it straight to into the black background. Or if you have, for example, the transparency enabled, you will see it against a transparent background, right? So sometimes I want to work only with the glow against a black background, and this is really helpful for that. Now the X-ray has been enhanced a lot as well with the gradient map, so you can see it has a temperature map that you can see the brightest part of the image better than before. If you want to learn more about it, I really recommend you to go to the documentation and read each of them, because if you want to know how you're gonna squeeze all the way on Oniric, you have to understand it very well, what is happening behind the scenes. So everything is explained with images here and with examples, and maybe visually you can understand what is happening. But if you read it, I love documentation in other software, because if I read what is happening behind the scenes, I can understand better how to use that tool, right? So yeah, go ahead, go check it out, the documentation, hope it is helpful for you. And yeah, let me show you the niche features. So we're gonna start with this image that I made a long time ago. To open Oniric, you need to go to Window, Extensions, Oniric. If you cannot see Oniric on the window extensions, and you're a Mac probably, and the thing is that you have to enable the ROSETTA mode. I will put a link on how to enable it. Oniric has been evolving so much, and in this version I added so much features. And one of the most powerful features that I added is this section of channels, which I want to explain right now. If you see this image right here, I have an overlay, an image overlay, which I already put as a screen mode. It is normal like this, and I just put a screen mode to get just all the brightest part only. What I want to show you with this image is the power of channels in Oniric and how to use them. Whenever you have an overlay on your image, you can make the overlay glow only. Normally, to create a glow with Oniric, you just press the new button, right? So I'm gonna press the new button, and let's say that I want to make only the electricity to glow. So with Oniric, what we used to do is create a mask with this button here and paint the areas that you want Oniric to create the glow from, right? But in this version of Oniric, we don't need to do that because we have now more control over it. So I'm gonna press cancel to get out from Oniric. And now with this overlay, what I want to do, what I want to create is, for example, you have this channel section and you can see two buttons, luminosity and transparency. Oniric can create channels based on the luminosity or the transparency of the selected layer or layers. You can select as well multiple layers. So if I want to create a luminosity channel for this layer, what I have to do is just select the layer that I want to create the luminosity channel from and just hit luminosity. And you can see Oniric says channel created. If you go to your channels, you will see that there's a new channel created based on the luminosity of your layer, right? So I'm gonna create a new glow, and now you can see how the channel was loaded. Now, if I enable the mask, if you click on load channel, you can load it, the previously created channel, and Oniric automatically, when you press load, it would create a mask only of those areas. So right now, if I update the mask, you'll see now that Oniric is creating the glow only on the areas of the electricity, right? Even though if I increase the threshold all the way to get all the light from those areas, Oniric will get only the light only from the painted areas, right? X-ray is something that I will explain later, but if you press X-ray, you will be able to see the light that Oniric is getting from your image to generate the glow from, right? So you see now that the glow is only being generated from the electricity and nothing more. So that's why it's so powerful to create channels and load them inside the mask of Oniric. So I'm gonna press cancel. Now you could guess how transparency will work, right? So let's say that I want to create some particles, for example, here, and I'm gonna take my brush and I'm gonna create a new layer here. Let's go to brush settings with the F5, shape dynamics, size. Let's take the scattering, scatter all the way, and transfer opacity all the way, right? So I'm gonna create some random particles like this. Let's pick a white color, and maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit more of spacing, brush tip shape, and a bit more spacing, right? So let's say we have some particles there, blah, blah, blah. And we want to create a channel from the transparency of those particles, right? Because right here we have an overlay that has a black background, but if you control click or command click on the pixels, you will see that is a flat image, right? It doesn't have transparency. So I'm gonna deselect with Control D or Command D, And if you want to create a transparency channel to be used in Oniric, what you can do is select the layer and just press transparency, and Oniric will create a channel from that transparency data. So if you go to the channels, you will see that you have now the electricity one, and you have now the particles one, right? So if you go to the RGB, so I'm gonna create a new glow, and I'm gonna load the mask, and I'm gonna load the channel of the particles to Oniric. So if I enable the mask, go to click the load channel, and you can see now that we have two channels, the channel from the electricity and the channel for the particles. I'm gonna load now the particles and press update. Now, if you click the X-ray, you will see now the Oniric is getting only the light from the particles. So if I increase the threshold, you will make the particles glow, which is something that I really love about this version, because you can create some, I cannot wait to see you guys using this feature. And of course you can colorize it and change the particles color for whatever you want and make them glow so much, because it is never enough glow. So yeah, another example to use the channels feature with Oniric is with embers or sparks. Actually, any overlay that you throw in Photoshop can be used with Oniric. It's up to your creativity how you use this feature, right? So I'm gonna click on the layer that I want to create the channel. I'm gonna click on luminosity. This time it's gonna be luminosity. Channel created. You can see the channel created here, and create a new glow. And for example, instead of painting the mask on each particle like this, I'm gonna erase the mask here. I'm gonna load the channel of the particles channel, and now I'm gonna update, clicking here. And now you can see now only the particles, they are glowing, which is what I wanted. You can increase the threshold, even though if you increase the threshold, remember when you have a mask, if you increase the threshold, it's only increase the threshold only on those areas, right? So if you click on X-ray, you will see that the threshold is only being applied on those areas. So you can make really cool effects with this feature. I can change the colors as well. Let's say something more reddish like this, or something more bluish maybe, I don't know. Actually, this looks cool, I like it. This is something that I really like about this feature, and let me know in the comments what you think about it. Let's talk about the input image section in Oniric, right? So we have these three settings: the transition, the threshold, and the dynamic range will determine how much light is Oniric getting from your image, right? This will tell Oniric where are the brightest areas from your image, and we'll get all the luminosity, and actually it's going to control that luminosity. It's going to change that luminosity of the input image to create different glows in the image, right? To understand how Oniric is creating the glows and where are those glows coming from, there is an X-ray helper here. All of these are switches that will help you to understand better Oniric and work faster. So I'm going to activate the X-ray to see what is happening with Oniric, right? With the X-ray, when you enable the X-ray, you can see the light that Oniric is getting from your image, right? All the luminance data, right? It is a temperature map. If I increase the threshold, you are increasing and making softer that transition. Oniric is getting the data from the brightest part of your image to the darkest part of your image, right? So that is the luminance. Let's talk about first with the transition. It is very straightforward. You have soft transitions and you have hard transitions. If I select the soft, you can see a really cool gradient from blue to green to yellow to red. With soft, you can see a really cool gradient. It is gradually getting the light from your image. If I choose the hard transition, Oniric is not getting gradually that light. If I disable the X-ray, you will see now how it's creating the glow, right? If I turn to soft transitions, you will see now that it's getting more light, but it is gradually decrease the threshold, right? And it's like a softer glow. If you want softer glows, use the soft transition. Now, the threshold controls how much light is only getting from your image, right? It's the range, that range of light, right? And it can be mixed with a dynamic range. If your image doesn't have enough light, you can pull out the light from the image, just increasing the dynamic range of slider. Right now, what I want to do is just, I want to mask only this area of the image, right? I'm gonna update the mask. And here you can see, I'm gonna enable the X-ray. And you can see for here, the warmer the tone, the brighter the glow, right? So if I increase the dynamic range here, what this dynamic range setting is doing is increasing the brightness of the input image. So Oniric can reach those areas that are very, very dark, right? So I can increase the dynamic range here, and you can see now the temperature is different. The brightest part become brighter, and the darkest part become brighter. So this is very helpful. If sometimes you don't have enough exposure, you can increase exposure with the dynamic range as well. So you can play around with that. Here I'm gonna decrease the dynamic range a little bit, but I really like how it burns the glow, you know, how it looks really burned, like it is a bright light from under, and it adds a lot to the image. Because in real life, something that is really bright, it reduces the contrast and creates that bloom effect that really love, right? So the warmer the tone, the brighter the glow. Remember that. The warmer the tone, the brighter the glow. If you have some points that they are red, it means that those are the brightest part of the image, and those are actually pure white. I forgot to mention that you can edit the glows whenever you want. It makes Oniric non-destructible, which is really powerful because it separates the glow from your original layers and it doesn't destroy any of your pixels. So you can edit them whenever you want. To edit them, just click on the layer that you want to edit and click on this edit button, right? And Oniric will open and will load all the settings that you previously have inside the glow. Another thing really cool about Oniric is that you can take it out from there and you can move it around and have it wherever you want, right? I like to use this to have it to move it around because I can play around with the image. You zoom in, zoom out. To do the zoom in and zoom out like I'm doing it, you can press Ctrl and spacebar on Windows and the left click and just drag it to the left to zoom out, drag it to the right, zoom in. On Mac, you have to press Command and spacebar to do it. Whenever you want to reset your glows to the defaults, just click on this button and it will reset Oniric to default values. So now let's talk about the general settings section. Basically, these are the settings that will control the whole glow. We're going to start with the main opacity. We have main opacity, we have core opacity, radius, exposure, and gamma. The main opacity, what it does is actually, well, it controls the main opacity of Oniric, right? Every setting is multiplied by the main opacity. If you have 50, if you have 45 of the main opacity, everything that you do in Oniric, it's going to be at 45. So if you reduce it to 1, everything will reduce to 1, right? Everything is multiplied to that. Controls basically the main opacity, like that, straightforward. The core opacity is really cool because if you see right now in the saber, you have these really strong, bright highlights on the core, right? On the center. So if I reduce the core opacity to 0 to 1, you will lose that. You can have smoother glows, you can have like a more soft glows, for example, like in the hair, it's pretty cool how it looks, right? But in the saber doesn't. So I want to retain that kind of core on the saber to have that strong light on the center, right? So that's the core opacity, what it does and what you can use it for. Then we have the radius, which the radius is controlling the spreadness, how the glow will be spread, right? If I decrease the radius, it works exactly like the Gaussian blur, right? If you reduce the radius, you're reducing the amount of the Gaussian blur that is doing the glow, right? If you increase the radius all the way, it will Gaussian blur everything into that amount, all right? So it's pretty simple, right? Now then we have the exposure. The exposure will control the brightness of the glow. If you actually, in the other version of Oniric, we couldn't do to minus values, and now we can go -5 and +5, right? So if you increase the exposure, you can have really bright glows like this one. And in real life, when you do photography normally, and only if you do HDR, you can have like all the way being well exposed in the image. But sometimes the brightest part of the image, they are overexposed, which sometimes that give that natural feeling, that realistic feeling. So you can achieve this with the exposure, right? To have a more realistic look sometimes. I mean, this is very exaggerated, right? Right? But you get the point. It's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward, right? One of my favorites. I mean, everything is my favorite. I really love this plugin. Everything is. I play with it every day, you know. So I love everything about it. But man, the gamma. It's a game changer for Oniric, because if I'm gonna turn down the gamma to 1, right? What the gamma is doing actually is it's changing the way that the brightness is displayed, and it displays it into a non-linear way. So you can somehow it reduces the contrast of the glow and brings a more ambient glow into the scene, right? So if I increase the gamma, you will start to see. I mean, the computer have the data, right? But the eyes cannot see that. So if you do some gamma correction, you can start seeing that data that the eye is not seeing. So the gamma helps to do that, right? So I use it to when I want to create some ambient glows. It helps a lot with that. For example, here I'm gonna mask the saber. I'm gonna click here. I'm gonna press Shift, hold it, and then click again. Click here, press Shift, hold it, and click again. And you can create like straight lines like that. And I'm gonna update the mask. And if I colorize it, you can see really cool effects here. For example, if you see the face is red, right? So you should have like a red-orange glow, right? So you can change the color here. If it is too saturated, you can reduce the saturation as well. I like to reduce the saturation something like 85, 90, because it helps to blend the core better with everything. And if you increase exposure, you can have really interesting things, right? I mean, this can be very bright, probably in the night can be very bright, you know, and that gives the saber that power that it deserves, because sabers are powerful, right? So you can play around with the gamma, right? For example, if you go all the way, instead of going 0 hue, you can go to 360 hue, and you can have a different red right there. So this is another example with an image of Ben Farren. You can check it out, his link here in his profile. And I'm gonna show you how the gamma works again. And if you can see here, for example, if you go to the X-ray, everything that is in blue, I'm gonna reduce the threshold a little bit, right? Like this. And if you can see how the light is bleeding here. You can have light, really cool light wrap into the scene, into the subject, which helps a lot to blend it, right? You can create some really cool effects with Oniric, like these ones, right? If I increase the threshold here, and you can have this really cool ambient glow coming from the back, coming from the sunset, right? And you could make 2 glows, one from the sunset and one for this saber. Actually, I'm gonna do that, right? I'm gonna decrease the exposure a little bit, and probably something like this. And I'm gonna mask out this thing. I'm gonna invert the mask, update it, and Oniric will get the glow from everything except the saber, right? So I'm gonna save this glow, and then I'm gonna create another glow for the saber only, right? So let's go and press new again, and now I'm gonna mask the saber. I'm gonna mask the saber, click here, hold shift, click, right? And then update the mask, and I'm gonna change the color of course as well, and I'm gonna change it something to green, yellow, something like that, right? I mean, I just love it. I love how Oniric works with sabers and that kind of stuff. So cyberpunk stuff, I think, is just perfect for that. And yeah, you can change the color here as well. Maybe if it is too bright. Something that I really like about Oniric is that this kind of stuff here, like how the core is bleeding, you know, I love it because it integrates really cool with the scene, right? So yeah, this is so cool. And if I can play around with the gamma and make some ambient glows like that. If you reduce it to 1, you can see that you don't have that ambient glow like that. So you can go all the way. You can, I don't know, it's up to you how you want to use it gamma, but I just like to exaggerate things, right? So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I'm gonna save it. And we have now we have 2 glows on this image, right? So in a non-destructive way, destructive way, right? So we have the saber, and we have the sunset, and we have the image. So this is pretty cool. So yeah, that's everything for the general settings, and let's go and talk about the glare. Now let's talk about the glare section, right? To enable the glare, just click here, and it automatically will add the glare on top of the blue, right? So we have some settings here. We have the blend, we have this 2, 4, 6, which is the amount of rays that the glare will have. Now we have this core checkbox, which it will help you to include the core or fade out the core. If you have it checked, it will include the core on the glare, and you will have that strong highlights on the core. And if you uncheck it, you will fade out the core from the glare. So next we have the glare opacity, which is like the main opacity for the main glow, but only for the glare. So you can control the glare opacity separated from the other glow. So this is pretty helpful to have more control over it, right? The length of the glare, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It will control the length, right? How spread will it be? You can go from 0 to 3. Also, the length will help you to soften that glare as well. If you have like really small values of the length, you will have a stronger concentration of the glare on the core, on the center. And if you increase the length, you will soften that glare a little bit. Then we have the rotation, which you can rotate the glare wherever you want, right? Now, something really cool about this next one, the detail slider, is that if your glare you feel it like is a little bit more digital, you can give it a little bit more of randomness, like more chaos, just increasing the detail. And it will create like, instead of having just one streak, like one ray, it will break that ray into more smaller rays. So you can have a more natural and more chaotic effect with the glare. I'm gonna turn down the detail. So I'm gonna play around with the amount of rays. I'm gonna put 4. Now, mind that the more rays that you use, the slower it can be, right? Because it takes more time to process. Oniric not only doesn't have to process one ray, but only have 1, 2, 3 rays, right? Which makes 6 rays. Now, if we use a detail, we can have a more natural stuff here, which is really cool. And if you colorize it, it will get a really cool effect with the glares. You can have as well, not only 4, but you can have 6 rays, which will make a little bit slower, depending on your computer. And now you can have a really cool this effect, like a bright lights from the night, like some lamps on the night. Now there's another really cool feature that whenever you enable the glare, it is enabled for the glare. Now there is something that is activated whenever you get the glare active, and in the FX tab you will see now that the glare spectrum is active now. Now this is really cool to give a more realistic look to your glares and have more variations and do some interesting effects on it. We will talk about in a minute. Now let's talk about the color section. This is an amazing image from Indro, and his artistic name is Let's Say Create. You probably know him on Instagram or YouTube. He have a really cool channel on YouTube that you can go and check it out because he has really cool tutorials that you can learn a lot from. So once we're inside Oniric, and as I showed you previously, you can turn on the colorize on this helper. Whenever you colorize it, it will get the color of the hue that you choose. You can move the hue and you can move the saturation as well. But we have another thing. You can sample the color that you want. Next on the hue, you have this eyedropper, which if you click it, you will be able to sample a color from the image, and Oniric will get that color, that hue, that saturation from the sample color, from the sample pixels. So I don't want to sample the color of the image when the glow is applied. So I'm gonna turn off the preview of the glow, and I'm gonna sample something like this, some magenta tones like this, because I want to create the glow on the same tone, on the same hue as the image, right? Now, if you feel like the saturation is very low, you can just turn it up, and it will get more like the ambient glow that we want from those areas, right? We just have to mask those areas and tell Oniric that we only want the glow to be on those parts, right? Update the mask, and you will have those really cool neon magenta letters glowing on the dark. Now I want to talk about deeper on the mask feature, and this image is perfect for that. To disable the mask and delete it, just click on the mask whenever you have enabled it. The glow, I'm gonna reset everything. I'm gonna start everything from scratch, like this, and I'm gonna turn down the exposure to 0. What I want to do, I want to show you something. If you enable the mask, you are able to paint the areas that you want to get the glow from. So if I would like to get the glow only on the magenta areas, what would you do? Well, paint with the mask, right? But there's something that the mask feature has, and it is really powerful. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's not depending on the image, but you have this eyedropper here. If you click it, you can tell Oniric to get a selection based on a color range. So if I get this magenta here, you see how Oniric is getting that magenta tones there, right? And if you can see here, Oniric made a mask on those areas, right? If I put this, probably it won't work well, you know, because it is mixing a little bit of the blue with the magentas, etc. So to make it work, make sure that you have like solid colors, or you don't have like a really wide range of gradients, because it won't work well. Now Oniric, we had told Oniric that we want only those areas, the red areas, to be visible, right? To create a mask on those areas, right? So I'm gonna update the mask, and you will see now only the magenta areas are glowing. So now we can increase the exposure to make those areas to be brighter. And Oniric, it is not getting any glow from the other areas, but only the magentas, right? Which is really helpful a lot of times. Now, as we have only selected the magentas areas, we can see with the X-ray how much light it's getting Oniric from those areas, right? Right now we can see that it is bluish. Something that I have to mention really important about this. You have a gradient map, right? The more blue and green tones that you have, the more blue and cyan tones, it's gonna have more saturation on your glows, and the more yellow and more red, it's gonna desaturate it a little bit because they are being brighter than the other glows than in real life. You know, you don't have like strong highlights, very saturated. It's impossible to have it. You know, the brighter the glow, the less saturated it is. So this temperature map will tell you that. So here I want to increase the dynamic range to make those areas pop a little bit more. Maybe that's too much. You see here how it start to burn those areas, and I don't want that, right? So I'm gonna turn down the dynamic range, and instead of the dynamic range, I'm gonna turn up the threshold, right? Probably not, but that's much. I think like the normal values were good. So now with the mask, I can paint the areas that I want. For example, here we have these buttons, right? We have the load channel that previously I showed you how to load the channels. We have the blur. The blur, how it works. Whenever you have your mask, like here, for example, all the red areas are the mask, right? If you click the blur, it will create, it will Gaussian blur your mask in 1 pixel. So whenever you press it, it blurs the mask in 1 pixel. If you press it again, it blurs the mask in 1 pixel, right? This is for softening the mask. So this will help you with the threshold to have a softer transition. Now let's say that you want the glow to be only glowing. For example, we want to create several glows for this image, right? So I'm gonna go to the mask, I'm gonna click edit, and I'm going to delete the mask, and I'm gonna paint only on the sword, like this, right? I'm gonna update the mask. When you update the mask, I want to make only the sword to be visible in the glow, but as you can see now, Oniric is getting glow from other areas, not only that widest part of the image, right? So how to see it? Well, go to the X-ray, and you can see right now Oniric is getting glow from other areas that I don't want. So you can turn down the threshold all the way, and as the sword is purely white, probably you can increase the dynamic range here a little bit, or you can change it. Instead of soft, you can change it to hard transitions, and you will get only sword like this, right? And you can increase the threshold here, and you can see now I'm just getting the glow from that sword here. You can, for example, I'm gonna turn down the exposure, and I'm gonna make it glow a little bit, something maybe greenish, something maybe I actually like that tone, or maybe something bluish, right? And if you actually, I like that a lot. I like that really much. And you can turn up the exposure, and you can give that energy to that glow with exposure. Also, if you feel there's a lot of ambient glow, you can turn down the gamma as well and start increasing it a little bit like this. Now let's say that you want, instead of making a mask for the sword or everything, instead of making a mask for everything, you want to isolate her from the glow, right? So if I go to the mask, I'm gonna delete it, and if you paint over her, over the areas that you don't want the glow on, you can invert the mask, and if you invert it, you are telling Oniric only generate the glow from the red areas, right? So when I update the mask, And you can see now, if I go and reset the values, it will remain the mask, right? But I reset all the settings to default. And if you go to the X-ray, you will see now that she is isolated from the glow. Now I want to talk about the helper switches, which is very helpful for all the workflow inside Oniric. You can learn more about them on the documentation page, but I will talk about how it works and every one of them. This is an amazing image by my friend Jan Gonzalez. First of all, we have the auto update, which, I mean, it's auto update, right? It is straightforward. If you disable it, you will be able to change a lot of settings, and then when you enable it again, Oniric will update again. Right now, as it is enabled, everything that you change, every setting that you move, Oniric will auto update. If I want to change some settings, let's say that you already know how to work with Oniric, I already know how to work with Oniric, and I know what effect I want to do exactly, and I don't have a preset for that right now. I can turn it off. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a mask here on the edges of the portrait, right? And then I'm going to update the mask. Also, I'm going to create a glare. I'm going to put enable the glare. Maybe I'm going to change, instead of color dodge, I'm going to change it to linear dodge. The length is going to be something like 2, maybe. The glare opacity is going to be something like this. Probably the detail a little bit more. The rotation, something like this. And also I'm going to click on the color, probably something like this. So I already know how it's going to look because I've been using Oniric every day for a long time right now, right? Actually, I know it. I know how it's going to look, right? So I'm gonna press auto update again, and it's gonna make all the process of Oniric. It's not going to make the whole process of it, but every of the setting at the same time. I just need to increase the threshold here. I have this really cool effect that I can apply to this portrait, or maybe, I don't know, another portraits, something like that, right? It's really helpful because Oniric takes time sometimes, and the more effects that you put on it, it will take more time to render, right? So sometimes you already know what you want to create and you don't want to wait for that. So just switch off the auto update and then move the settings and then click auto update again, right? The second one is, I'm gonna turn off the glare. The second one is the on mold, right? Is it the transparency? Normally on Oniric, it renders against a black background. Now in this version of Oniric, it has been requested a lot to include a feature on Oniric to be able to render the glow against transparent background. So this one here, this help switcher here, unmolds the glow. It creates the glow into a transparent background. So if I click it, you will be able to see the glow against transparent background. We have the solo, right? We have this solo helper switch. If you press it, you will see only the glow, right? You will see how the glow will render. If I turn off the mold, the transparency, you will see that the glow is rendering against a black background. If you switch it on, it will render the glow against a transparent background, right? So that is a very requested feature for Oniric. I hope you find it useful, find it helpful. Let me know in the comments what you think about it also. And please subscribe and let more people know about Oniric, please. It really helps me to spread the word about Oniric because this has been my dream and I love to do this. So I really appreciate your support every time. So let's go. I mean, you have already seen the third one, which is X-ray. You already know how it works. You can learn more about it on the documentation as well. So the X-ray basically is like the preview of the input image, right? The fourth helper switch is the colorize. If you want to colorize the glow, just enable the colorize. If it is not enabled, Oniric will get the colors from the original image. If you click the colorize, if you switch it to on, it will colorize the image, right? The fifth one is you can isolate the glow from your input image, right? So you can see only the glow and how it will render when you click save. This other one is a 16-bit preview. In the other version of Oniric, it used to render the glow in 8-bit. Why to optimize times, right? To make it faster. But now for the purpose of previewing and seeing the final result straight inside the preview of Oniric, you can turn on the 16-bit preview, right? This does not affect when you save the glow. If I disable this, it can turn Oniric a little bit faster, but if you increase a lot the gamma, you will be able to see a lot of banding, right? Because it is rendering the glow in 8-bit, right? If you enable it, if you turn it on again, you will be able to see Oniric in 16-bit the way that it is going to be rendered, right? This is only in the preview. It doesn't affect the output, right? When you press save. So if you are previewing Oniric in 8-bit and it is faster for you, you can move settings around. Then if you press save, it doesn't matter because it's going to render Oniric in 16-bit. And the last one is the most used for myself, the preview one, right? Is a before and after, right? This also doesn't affect the output of Oniric. It's only to be the before and after, right? You turn Oniric on and you turn Oniric off, right? So that's basically it. So now I want to show you the next tab, which is effects. So let's go for it. So when we're inside Oniric, we have the other panel, right? We have the main settings panel, and then we have the effects panel, right? In this effects panel, we have the glare spectrum, which I will talk about in a minute, and we have the light dispersion, right? I want to talk about first for the light dispersion. First of all, let me just center the glow into the fire, right? So I'm gonna create a mask here, and I'm gonna tell Oniric to create only the glow on the fire, right? Because in real life, the fire, it is overexposed. It's never exposed right to the camera, right? Because it is so bright that the camera get it overexposed. So we want to create that with Oniric, right? So I paint the mask over the fire, I update the mask, and then I want to just, I'm gonna change the color because I want to colorize the fire, maybe turn down the saturation and turn up the exposure so I can overexpose the fire, right? Like this. And maybe just switch the hue to something like this, right? So this way I have something more realistic, a more realistic fire than this one, right? And I have that bloom effect that happens to the camera, to our eyes, with very bright areas of light, right? So I will decrease a little bit the gamma here, something like this. I like how it looks. And now let's go to the effects tab, right? Let's talk about first the light dispersion, right? The light dispersion, we have two types. We have center light dispersion and we have offset light dispersion, right? The light dispersion is controlled by the distance, right? If I increase the distance here, you will see that it starts to breaking up like the RGB colors. It separates the channels of the glow based on the distance, right? It separates, it gives more distance to the red, then less distance to the green, and a negative distance to the blue too. It can be separated and create that kind of chromatic aberrations, right? What Oniric does is with the type of center, it breaks the channels from the center to the other parts of the image, right? So the more distance you give, the more separation will have each channel from each one, right? If you use the offset, it will separate the channels in 45 degrees at the same distance, right? So you can use this to create really cool effects like chromatic aberration and have more realistic look to your glows like this, right? If I go and solo it, you can see here, I'm gonna turn off the distance. If you have 0 distance, it will turn off. Once you increase the distance from 1 to 100, it will be enabled. So I will enable it like maybe 3, something like this. And in photography, it happens with the edges with the more contrast, but we are doing this with the whole glow of Oniric, so you can have more interesting look in the glow, right? So maybe I can use the center as well, and I can separate it 2 or 3 pixels here, right? Something like that. And we'll give you that little chromatic aberration that happens in real life with real cameras. Actually, there's no lens that have no chromatic aberration, but they have like a minimum, you know. It's pretty funny because when we do digital things, we want to make those kind of mistakes, like create those kind of mistakes to create realistic stuff. Actually, bloom and glare, they are aberrations of the light into the eye, right? Into the camera as well. So it's pretty cool how the light works. Now, also we have these 3 channels here, right? So let me explain you how it works. With this image, you will be able to see better how the distance works and how the type. If I increase the distance, you will see how the channels are spread from the center to the outside parts of the image. And if you change it to the offset, it will separate the channels in 45 degrees and the same distance. So about these channels here. So how do they work? Well, they're there because you can mix 2 channels together and leave the other one alone. If I want to mix the red and the green channel, it will mix into yellow, right? And it will leave the blue channel alone. So it is separating the channels, the red and the green together and the blue alone. Let's say if I want to mix the red with the blue, you will have magenta and green, right? So you have the red and the blue have been mixed. And if you want to mix the blue and the green, you just turn on the green and the blue and they will be mixed, right? So you can create really cool effects with this. For example, I have a preset here, Cyber Cyan Red, I think it's this one. So this is a really cool, something that you can do with this effect. For example, I have the distance in 100 and I change the color here to blue. It is colorized. So you can change a lot of settings. You can play around with it and see some really cool effects with that. By the time that I upload this video, probably you will have more presets than these ones. I will talk about this presets in a minute. Just play around with the distance and the channels like that. If you enable 3 channels, they won't be mixed into one because otherwise they will be white, right? But if you have 2 channels on, they will be mixed, they will be merged into one, right? So look at that. You can create really cool effects with this. It's so cool. I love it. So yeah, play around with it and let me know what you think in the comments. And please, again, if you haven't, subscribe and like this video and share it with your friends so more people can know about Oniric. And now let's talk about the glare spectrum, which is something really cool as well. Now the last setting is the glare spectrum, which natively by default it is off, it is not activated. So to enable it, once you enable the glare, you will be able to enable the glare spectrum. Right now I will create the glare only on these lights and we're gonna update the mask. So now the glare is just in that area, right? And how the glare spectrum works? Well, you have a blend. It's a blending mode, right? You have 3 blending modes. You have multiply, overlay, and soft light. You have the mix, you have the frequency, you have the blur, and you have the saturation of the effect. This glare spectrum is created on top of the glare. So when you choose any blending mode, it will blend the glare spectrum the way that you want, right? So to make it appear, you have to increase the mix, right? Mix is how much the effect will be mixed with the glare. So if you increase all the way the mix, you will have like 100% mix and you can have 50% mix, right? So this way you can control how much you want the effect to be visible on the glare. As you can see, you have a really cool gradient of colors from RGB. It helps you to create a more realistic look to the light, like breaking that RGB, right? Breaking the light. If you feel that the mix is really strong, you can just play around with the slider. I really like to use, for example, the overlay because it is stronger and the colors and the blending mode is a little bit different from the other one. And I just play around with the mix, right? With a little bit of mix. So once I have something like this, and you can, for example, here I can turn off the core because I feel right now that the core of the glare is too hot, right? So what could I do is just bring down the exposure to 0. There's some things that you could do here. You can try turning off the core, that's one thing. And also something that you could do is just decrease the glare opacity as well, like this. So now you can see you can have this like kind of anamorphic lens flares on the top of the light, and you can make really cool effects with this one. That's a mix. The frequency, what is the frequency? You have a gradient from RGB, right? And it is repeating itself, the pattern like tac, 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 RGB, 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 right? If you increase the frequency, that pattern will be like shorter, right? So you will be able to see more of that pattern. And if you decrease the frequency, you will be able to see less of that pattern. You know, it's gonna be wider. To visualize it in a better way, I will turn down the blur. The blur will just blur the RGB colors inside of the gradient. So if I decrease the blur, you will be able to see better the pattern of the spectrum. If I increase the frequency, you will be able to see how much, a lot of that pattern, right? So this is something that happens in real life. If you, for example, see a really bright light on the night or something like that, you will see that all the spikes, all the glares that is created, they have like a really cool gradient breaking the light, you know, in colors, in RGB colors. So Oniric is trying to recreate that. Now the blending mode soft light is like an overlay, but it's just softer, right? It's like 50% of the overlay. So now, for example, I really like how it looks, but I'm gonna turn down, maybe I will colorize it to make it look more bluish, and probably something like here, something like that. And something really cool that you can do, for example, here, I'm gonna put 240, something like that. Something that you can do really cool is just turn down the saturation here, because you can control the saturation of the glare spectrum as well, right? And it will retain the pattern of the RGB, but it will have less saturation. It will have, or it will be saturated or not saturated depending on the amount of saturation that you give to it. So now you can still see the pattern, but I'm gonna decrease the frequency, and you can make a really cool effect with this, like something more natural, not that digital, like very smooth, right? And I'm gonna increase the saturation a little bit. And also something really cool about the glare spectrum is that if you decrease the saturation of when you have it colorized, if you increase the saturation, you will be able to see more the colors of the glare spectrum, right? Because they're mixing together. So you have to play around with the different mix for that, right? So here, for example, what I could do is just break the glare, something like this, to have more details on the glares, like so. And you can start to see something that happens in real life, right? Maybe I can turn down the glare opacity probably to make it something more natural, something like that. And probably I can increase the saturation a little bit as well. And if you increase the gamma, you will be able to see more this glare spectrum, because the more amount of gamma that you put on the plugin, it will make more visible the glare spectrum, right? Because it works behind the scenes like that. If I increase exposure here, you will be able to see the glare a little bit more. So yeah, there's something really cool that you can do. For example, if I'm gonna decrease all the way the mix, and I'm gonna increase all the way the mix. So yeah, this is pretty, look, this is pretty cool. I really love how it looks. It looks more natural, it looks more something that the camera will get from that source of light. Yeah, so you can play around, for example, with the amount of rays that you want, and just change the rotation of the glare as well. Now, mind that the more effects that you put on it, it will take longer to render, right? So if you have a lot of rays, it will take a little bit longer than if you have just 2 rays. Just be aware of that. Look at this. I really like this effect, how it looks. Even though if it is stronger, I really like it, you know. I made it stronger on purpose to teach you how it looks. So once you create a really cool effect that you like and you want to save it, you want to recreate it every time, you can save it as a preset as well. You can go to the third panel here that is for the presets, and you will have a factory presets. By the time that this tutorial is up in YouTube, probably you will have more presets if you download Oniric. So to save this as a preset, you go to the user presets, click on this icon, and just, let's say for example, I don't know, sci-fi glare, something like that, right? So every time that you access Oniric, let's cancel it. And every time that you access Oniric, you will be able to get access to that, right? So I'm gonna create a mask again here, 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 and here. I'm gonna update the mask, and I will load the user preset here. So just click on it, and you will be able to load it. Actually, this is going to be a preset for the factory presets, so you won't need to do it again. If you want to delete a preset, just click on this gear and these birds will appear, and just click on one of them and they will be removed from your presets. Now be aware that this cannot be undone, so just be careful to not delete the one that you want. Alright guys, so I think it's everything covered in Oniric 2 version 2. I'm really happy to share with you this version. I can't wait to see what you are going to create, because I've seen so many insane things on the Instagram of Composite Nation that you can follow it. You can see all the images that people is creating if you follow Composite Nation's Instagram and see what is people creating with Oniric and get inspired with all the amazing art that people is creating. So yeah, just give a like, subscribe, and let me know what you think of the video. Hope it was helpful for you. And I think this was a little bit long, but I wanted to cover everything about this plugin. I have a lot of things to tell you as well, but I will have another videos for that. I will make dedicated tutorials to create some kind of effects that I want to share with you, but there will be more tutorials for Oniric 2. And yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like, subscribe, share, and stay creative. Yeah, keep everything glow. Thank you very much. See you in the next video. Bye. We're gonna bury this, and I want you. This is ground. This is bad. This is bad. This. With some examples, I'm gonna show you how to create. So you can understand exactly what those. And I'm gonna. Oh, and I'm going. Oops. To understand input image, to understand input, which will help you. We have this core switch, we have this core. We have this core. That is we just now the final fart. The final fart. And this helps you to create some kind of realistic. It turned off. I don't know why. But yeah. Oh, and it turned off. So once if you made a once if you